This is funny. Jordan Peterson gets asked what can teachers do to stand against quote-unquote wokeism, quote-unquote, and he goes on to a crazy religious rant.
How can we teachers push against wokeism in primary and secondary schools and get kids to care again?
Yeah, right, because wokeism is what stopped kids from caring about school and education, when that's not even the case.
Oop.
Well, the first thing I would say is talk it over with your family, right? Because if you're going to enter the fray, you better not do it accidentally, and you better do it with some preparation. And I would say, get your resume in order. Yeah. Lay out an alternative pathway forward. You know, there may be other places you can find work. But you have to have that in your back pocket, because you can't enter into a war without being prepared.
Right, because teachers teaching kids about history is somehow a war.
And you can't do this stupidly and impulsively. And then you got to think about what it is you're fighting about and why. And you know, if you're a sensible teacher, you're fighting to be able to serve your students properly and to tell the truth, right? That's
Okay, so if you tell kids that, hey, we had slavery back in the early days of America, how's that not telling the truth?
what you're fighting for if in your whole life, if you have any sense, but certainly on the teaching front. And I don't think there is a more dire sin than corrupting children. That's pretty much pinnacle sin right there.
Wow. So Jordan Peterson thinks it's a pinnacle sin to teach kids about history, how black people were treated, and how, you know, we had segregation laws, how we had Jim Crow laws, and stuff like that. How is teaching kids that sinful?
There. Maybe the only more egregious error is swearing to do nothing but violate your own conscience, you know, out of spite and bitterness. That might even be worse, but it's a tough battle for most hellish error. And, you know, so that's another thing to think about if you are a teacher or someone entrusted with the care of other people, is that you're going to have to take your blows to push back against enforced and mandatory idol worship, let's say.
Right, because somehow teaching kids history is idol worship. Like, this dude is literally insane.
But that's a lot easier battle than losing control of your own soul. So, and I really mean that. So, you know, there are times where all you get to do is pick which hell you're going to wander into, because you're already there in some regard. And I think we're living in institutions now that are corrupt enough often so that if you happen to be tangled up inside of them, those are basically your choices. But, you know, you still try to put yourself together so you have potential alternatives at hand, so you can't be threatened too direly with the loss of your livelihood. And talk to your family, talk to your friends carefully, lay out a plan, use minimum emotion, minimum force, start talking to parents. Because what you'll find as a teacher is that like 85% of parents agree with you, or 90% or 95%, especially when it comes to the propriety of 144 quadruple D giant-breasted trans teachers teaching shop for.
He's upset about big-breasted women teaching shop. Like, what's the issue? Are we Are we wanting to like remove women as teachers if they have a certain cup size? That's pretty crazy.
For example, there are really very few people who think that that's a good idea. And so, although they seem to exist, perversely enough, and I mean that with the precise meaning of that term. And then, you know, strap yourself in, because you're in for quite an adventure if you decide to go up against, you know, Moloch, let's say. And
Moloch? What is he even talking about? Who is going against quote unquote Moloch? Some ancient deity that nobody even worships. The only people that constantly reference Moloch is Christians when they want to try to claim like these that people are like sacrificing kids and stuff, when that's not even the case. Man, why is Jordan Peterson so religiously crazy?
You want to do that lightly. So you got to gather your family and your friends around you, make yourself a plan, lay out an alternative pathway to something approximating economic security, be prepared to move if you have to. You know, there's a walloping teacher shortage in the United States, and there's still places there that are vaguely sane. And so prepare yourself.
Yeah, there's a teacher shortage, not because there's not enough, you know, racist bigots to be teaching kids. More so it's because teachers aren't getting paid enough to teach, and they're getting tired of, you know, the lack of pay.
You know, but like I said, you're gonna fight this battle one way or another. We're all in it. And you know, you might think I'll just keep my mouth shut and wait, and it's like, the problem with that theory is that as you keep your mouth shut and wait, you get weaker and older, and as those who you aren't pushing back against advance, they get stronger. And so, you know, you might think, well,
oh wow, you're explaining the passage of time. As you get older, you get weaker. As younger people grow up, they get stronger. Oh wow, what a breakthrough idea right there.
Handle it in 10 years. It's like, no, you won't. There'll be a lot less of you in 10 years than there is now if you keep retreating, and the thing that you're retreating from will just get larger as it devours whatever's in its path. So,
wow, devours. Yeah, because, you know, people wanting to be, you know, treated, you know, right is just devouring, quote unquote, the right wing.
It's pretty much here and now, folks, and so you might as well just swallow that bitter pill, and also understand that you probably don't have anything better to do anyways. You know, well, I really mean it. I mean it. You know, here's something that's useful to know. So in the story of Abraham, God is presented as the spirit that calls those who are too comfortable and privileged to the adventure of their life. And you might say, well, that's pretty rude of God. It's like, if you're all comfortable and privileged, Abraham is the son of rich parents, and he doesn't need to do anything in order to keep body and soul together except lay on the cot and, you know, eat peeled grapes. And God still makes himself manifest to Abraham in the form of that voice that exists inside of all of us, saying, you know.
Oh, so God manifests to him as a voice that everybody has in their head. So he just he just thought about stuff and assumed it was God telling him stuff. Like, it just goes to show, like, how little people really understood anything.
Get the hell out of your comfort zone there, buddy, and take on the snakes. And you might say, well, I'd rather lay here and, you know, eat Cheetos and watch pornography. And
he's giving everybody a little bit of insight on what he prefers to do, rather than, you know, go around telling people a bunch of lies and BS. He'd rather you just watch a bunch of porn, probably, you know, milking porn, and eating Cheetos.
You know, actually, you wouldn't rather do that, because one of the propositions that's embedded in the narrative of Abraham, which happens to be right, is, you know, we're built for romance and adventure, not for comfort. And so you're going to find the meaning of your life in adventure. And if you have an adversary voluntarily accepted, you've got yourself an adventure. And you know, if it's a pretty big adversary, well, then maybe you'll grow the hell up and get tougher while you fight it. And so you've certainly got that battle right at your doorstep. Teachers, it's waiting right there for you. And so you could also...
And what does it look like and sound like he's like trying to keep himself from crying like at every single second? It's like, dude, I mean, I understand, like, you know, people are emotional, but this guy just seems, he just cries at like everything, and it just, a bunch of it is just like meaningless stuff.
You could also imagine that you don't have anything better to do than what's right. And I don't just mean morally better in terms of your traditional duty. I mean literally better. There is nothing that you have to do that's better, all things considered, than to do what's right. That's why it's right. And you know that, and the reason you know that in part, because when you don't do what's right, your conscience tortures you. And that pesky little thing, and it won't go.
It's funny how she asked, hey, what can we do to stop, you know, quote unquote, wokeness in schools? And he just goes on a religious rant, and it's like, how does this have anything to do with what she asked?
Away, and that's pretty weird. Like, what's that about? Why can't you just give it a slap and, you know, keep wandering on your merry way? And the answer is, well, that isn't how reality is constituted. So do what's right and see what happens. You know, one of the things I did come to understand.
Do what's right, unless it means accepting trans people as people, because according to Jordan Peterson, that's one of the biggest evils in the world.
Understand is that the adventure of your life is embedded in truthful speech. So if you dissemble or remain silent, then you're hiding your light under a bushel. You're not revealing into the world, unfolding into the world who you are. And so that means you're not living. And you're going to suffer and be weak and waste yourself if you're not living, by definition. And then you might say, well, how do you live? It's like, well, by being who you are.
Yeah, and hey guys, I know you people are, you know, big time bigots, and, you know, if you don't express your bigotry towards trans people, the LGBTQ community, and black people and stuff, you're weak.
That's how you live. How could it be any other way? And you can't do that in falsehood, because, well, by definition, if it's false, by your own standards, it's not you. Then you live someone else's life.
Yeah, that's hilarious, a Christian talking about living somebody else's life and falsehoods and stuff, when the Christian religion is just a bunch of other people's lives and just a bunch of falsehoods and stuff. I just find it funny how, like, Christian religious nuts like this dude, like, wants to pretend like they're all about, like, truth and stuff when they believe in a fairy tale. It'd be, like, no different than, you know, him believing in Santa Claus and telling people that, you know, like, Wokism is, like, somehow, like, a sin against Santa Claus.
That seems like a bad idea. And it really raises a terrible question, is if you're not living your life because you're silent or you dissemble, you lie, so you lie by omission and commission. If you're not living your life, whose life are you living? And if you don't have control of your tongue because you're lying, who has control of your tongue? And the answer is, well, if you're lying, that the spirit of deceit has the control of your tongue.
He wants to make, like, everything as the spirit of deceit, the spirit of lust, the spirit of this, the spirit of that. It's like, I thought you were supposed to be like a you know, a logical, scientific dude. If that was the case, he wouldn't be claiming like everything is like a spirit or some kind of personality or has some kind of control over people. Because I'm questioning how big is the spirit of deception on you, and how much is it making you lying? Though that's not even what's going on. He's just lying because he loves to lie.
And I can tell you for certain that there is no worse master than the spirit of deceit. So that's what rules to.
Ooh, no worse master than the spirit of deceit? Okay, I guess what? No, he's worse than Satan? You left that Satan was supposed to be, the worst of the worst. But, I guess there's somebody above Satan?
Totalitarian states, right? And you might think, well, that sounds kind of metaphorical. It's like, no, it's not metaphorical at all, although it's also metaphorical, I suppose.
Wow, this thing I said isn't metaphorical, but it could also be metaphorical. It's like, is it one or the other?
It's not merely metaphorical. What's a totalitarian state? It's not innocent free people being oppressed by like a single Hitler. It's every single person lying about absolutely everything to absolutely everyone all the time.
Well, a tyrannical state is people lying, not that, you got a person like Hitler or somebody, committing mass genocide.
And so the ruler of the totalitarian state is the prince of lies, obviously. And I would say you probably don't want to invite him into your room.
You don't want to invite him, the prince of lies, the spirit of deceit. So he thinks lies are like living beings that can control people, and there's some kind of big macho lie deity that controls them and everything else. It's like, that's just insane.
Right? So that's all very much worth thinking about, unless you want to slouch roughly towards hell. And we're definitely toying with that at the moment in the West, and maybe not so slowly. So, and that's on you, right? Every time you are silent, every time you're silent, when you have something to say, the tyrant takes a little more ground.
Every time you're silent, the tyrant takes more ground. And, this is all in response to, quote-unquote, Wokism and stuff, and people on the left raising awareness about the discrimination and systematic racism stuff in the United States. He wants to make it seem like it's some kind of religious battle against these people, and that if you don't express more bigotry and hatred towards these people, that their tyrannical spirit of deception is going to control the United States more and more. He's just a total religious nut who loves to see people he hates to be abused and oppressed. That's all it is.
And that's on you, man. So don't do it. Don't do it. You'll pay for it. So will everyone you love. So will everyone else. So, yeah. All right. On that happy note,
Jordan, did you make your bed this morning?
Did you make your bed this morning? Hey, I asked you this question and you got really crazy. Are you okay?